Love isn't enough. Building real relationships beyond the fairy tale. Introduction. We have all been steeped in the lore, captivated by the silver screen, and hummed along to the melodies. Stories abound of love at first sight, of souls destined for each other, of a singular, incandescent feeling that obliterates every barrier and ushers in a happily ever after. This beguiling, ubiquitous narrative posits that if love's flame burns brightly enough, all else becomes inconsequential. It whispers of a life of effortless rapture, where understanding is innate and joy is a given, all conjured by the alchemy of romance. But what transpires when the final scene fades, the music recedes, and the unvarnished, day-to-day world asserts its presence? Could it be that this stirring, yet frequently facile, ideal is, in fact, a harbinger of disillusionment? This volume commences with precisely that query, delving into the chasm that separates the beguiling fairy tale from the often more intricate, yet immeasurably richer, tapestry of forging a resilient partnership. Our collective consciousness, it appears, is utterly enthralled by the notion that love is the supreme panacea. From antiquity's myths to the ubiquitous refrains of contemporary pop, the message remains unwavering: love conquers all. We are instructed, in a myriad of ways, that it is the paramount constituent, the ultimate aspiration, and the singular resolution to any relational discord. Consider the resonant declaration, "All you need is love." It is a potent, comforting sentiment, undeniably alluring for its promise of a straightforward path to contentment. If love is the sole prerequisite, then its discovery, its retention, and its guidance seem to chart a facile course. Yet, this unyielding preoccupation with romantic sentiment, however exquisite in its own right, frequently leads us to disregard and neglect the other indispensable elements that truly anchor a relationship. Herein lies the unraveling of the myth. We fall into the error of believing that if the feeling of love is present, all else will unfailingly align. However, as countless individuals discover through poignant experience, love in isolation is insufficient. It may ignite a vibrant spark, serve as a formidable impetus, but it is not the entirety of a thriving partnership's machinery. This book contends that enduring relationships are not constructed upon the sole bedrock of love, but upon something more robust and pragmatic. We must introduce the concept of a realistic relationship foundation, a framework meticulously assembled from essential, often unglamorous, yet utterly indispensable components that empower love not merely to endure, but to flourish across the expanse of time. Love, while a vital and wondrous facet of the human experience, is not a mystical artifact. It does not inherently resolve profound incompatibilities, mend fundamental breaches in communication, or obliterate personal imperfections. It can inspire us to endeavor to surmount these obstacles, but it does not effect their automatic rectification. Envision a magnificent, gleaming automobile propelled solely by love, devoid of the fuel of diligent effort, lucid communication, and a resolute will to problem solve. It will inevitably falter and cease to advance. Furthermore, the presumption that love automatically equates to compatibility is a perilous delusion. We can experience an intense attraction, a profound emotional resonance, with an individual whose core values, life aspirations, or even fundamental modes of engaging with the world diverge dramatically from our own. This is why we sometimes find ourselves acquiescing to behaviors in romantic partners that we would never countenance in a friend. The appellation of love can blind us, leading us to believe that the connection justifies enduring fundamental disrespect or incongruity. Healthy relationships necessitate mutual concession, where both parties feel acknowledged and esteemed. Love should not demand the sacrifice of our essential selves, our dignity, or our well-being. We must interrogate whether the concessions a relationship exacts are genuinely justifiable, a question intrinsically linked to self-respect and an understanding of our own fundamental needs. This is precisely why we must transcend the fairy tale and embrace the paradigm of a realistic relationship foundation. This foundation denotes the essential, practical constituents that underpin a salubrious and enduring partnership extending far beyond mere romantic sentiment. It encompasses mutual esteem, unassailable fidelity, shared fundamental values, uninhibited communication, unwavering trust, and the capacity for individuals to evolve in tandem while preserving their distinct identities. This foundation is meticulously constructed through deliberate intention, profound self-awareness, and an unwavering commitment to addressing practical incompatibilities and challenges, rather than relying on the often ephemeral and inadequate potency of love alone. It acknowledges that love can be a formidable force, but it is not a substitute for the assiduous labor of constructing a shared existence. In the ensuing chapters, we shall meticulously examine the pivotal pillars of this vital foundation, the conscious selection of commitment, the profound significance of respect, the imperative of shared values, the critical art of effective communication, the power of self-awareness, and the perpetual voyage of growth as individuals and as a united front. This book proffers a more grounded, practical, and ultimately more gratifying approach to cultivating and sustaining lasting, healthy relationships. It is an invitation to venture beyond the enchanting yet circumscribed realm of fairy tales and to embrace the inherent strength and inherent beauty of a love meticulously constructed upon solid ground. Chapter 1. Understanding Real Love. 1. Ideal vs. Real love. We've all witnessed it. The archetypal couple, bathed in an ethereal luminescence, their gazes interlocked, a silent vow of perpetuity exchanged between them. It is the denouement of countless cinematic narratives, the refrain of innumerable melodies, the aspiration breathed into existence by lore, passed through generations. This is the apotheosis of love meticulously sculpted by society for our consumption, a potent, all-encompassing force that descends, eradicates our tribulations and ushers us into a state of perpetual beatitude. It is a resplendent tableau, is it not? Cosmos wherein the discovery of the one signifies the vanishing of all our struggles, and existence transmutes into an unhindered, effortless odyssey of shared smiles and indomitable ardor. But let us dispense with pretense. When has existence itself ever felt truly unburdened? The narratives we are privy to concerning love often stand in stark antithesis to the convoluted, untidy verity of human communion. They proffer a conception of affection that is less about the collaborative construction of something enduring and more about succumbing to an overwhelming sentiment. This fabled romance is a formidable artifice, capable of inflicting grievous harm upon our quotidian unions. It instills the conviction that if our companionship does not manifest as a ceaseless pyrotechnic display, if it necessitates arduous, endeavored discord, or even the quietude of routine, then it is demonstrably devoid of authentic love. This is a perilous delusion, one that preordains disappointment and can even precipitate our estrangement from perfectly viable partnerships, simply because they diverge from the untenable script we have been bequeathed. Contemplate this. We are presented with characters who are instantaneously, profoundly smitten, and from that juncture onward, their lives achieve a state of flawless equilibrium. Adversities may arise, to be sure, but love invariably surmounts them with effortless grace. There are no awkward parleys regarding fiscal matters, no internecine conflicts over the placement of the toilet seat, no tranquil evenings wherein each individual retreats into the solitary pursuit of their own literary endeavors. It is perpetually a grandiloquent spectacle, passionate embraces, and the palpable sense that destiny has orchestrated the convergence of two perfect souls, predestined for an unblemished happily ever after. This is the prevailing narrative that has been disseminated, a narrative that frequently enshrines the pronouncements of figures like John Lennon, that love suffices as the sole requisite, as its anthem. It is a beguiling notion, a comforting proposition, yet it is also profoundly incomplete. This ubiquitous narrative engenders a perilous snare. When our own relationships fail to mirror this idealized depiction, we succumb to doubt. We question the veracity of our chosen partner, the profundity of our affections, or the very authenticity of our love, as being less than true. We may find ourselves perpetually seeking that elusive spark, that overwhelming sensation which portends our arrival at the threshold of a perfect, unlaborious romance. We might even mistake the intensity of passion or the exhilaration of novelty for the profound, enduring connection that genuinely sustains a partnership. This is the crucible wherein the cultural ideal violently collides with the tangible world. The fairy tale posits love as a destination, a magical point of arrival. Reality, however, reveals love as a journey, a ceaseless process of cultivation and augmentation. Therefore, what constitutes this real love that exists beyond the effulgence of fireworks and the conclusions of storybooks? It is not an emotion that engulfs one and magically rectifies all ills. Rather, it is a deliberate volition, a series of deliberate actions, and a deeply entrenched pledge. It is the act of consciously electing to be with another, day after day, through periods of prosperity and tribulation alike. It is the quiet understanding that blossoms between two individuals who have resolved to forge a shared existence. This is the essence of what we refer to when invoking the realistic relationship foundation. It is not constructed upon the precarious terrain of ephemeral sentiment, but upon the immutable bedrock of essential, practical constituents. These constituents are the unsung champions of enduring companionship. They encompass mutual deference, the kind that regards one's partner as an equal, even in the throes of disagreement. They entail unwavering allegiance, the covenant you forge with each other, promising to persevere, not merely when circumstances are facile, but when they are arduous. They are shared fundamental principles, the bedrock beliefs about existence that foster alignment, even when your perspectives on ancillary matters diverge. And critically, they encompass self-perception, the comprehension of one's own strengths, vulnerabilities, and emotional exigencies, which empowers one to present oneself optimally within the relationship. Augment this with transparent discourse, which facilitates the candid articulation of thoughts and sentiments, the trust that engenders a sense of security and stability, and the capacity for both individuals to mature and evolve whilst preserving their distinct identities. This realistic relationship foundation is the veritable anchor of a partnership. Consider the pronouncements of an individual who has navigated the labyrinthine complexities of a protracted union. They might articulate, as one individual sagaciously observed, that a flourishing partnership comprises 50% love, 50% values and commitment. This is not a repudiation of love. Rather, it is an acknowledgement of its indispensable role, coupled with a perspicacious understanding that love alone is insufficient. It is akin to possessing a magnificent, potent engine love, yet lacking a robust chassis, functional locomotion, and a skilled operator. The foundation, the vehicle will never convey one reliably to any destination. These pragmatic components are not passive byproducts of affection, they are active agents that necessitate conscious cultivation. They represent the deliberate undertaking of constructing a life in concert, not the fortuitous consequence of falling in love. The mythos of the fairy tale posits that love should be an unlabored affair. It implies that if one has encountered their soulmate, all will seamlessly fall into place. This is perhaps the most deleterious facet of the ideal. It conditions us to anticipate an unhindered passage, and when we inevitably encounter impediments, as all relationships do, we are ill-equipped. We have not acquired the skills to navigate conflict, to effect compromise, or to engage in those challenging yet indispensable conversations. We have not developed the proficiency to arbitrate our discrepancies. As the narrative implicitly suggested, we would not encounter any of significant import. The reality, however, is that successful relationships demand perpetual, intentional exertion. They necessitate negotiation, compromise, and the willingness to invest the requisite effort. This is the genesis of why relationships so frequently falter. When the initial ardor wanes and the mundane realities of existence assert themselves, the division of domestic duties, the management of financial resources, the nurturing of offspring, or simply the navigation of daily life. The couple who presume love to be sufficient finds themselves adrift. They have failed to erect the realistic relationship foundation to sustain them. They anticipated love as the panacea for all predicaments, but love itself does not resolve relational challenges. It can serve as a potent impetus to discover solutions, but it is not the solution in its own right. When difficulties arise, the couple who relied solely on emotion may perceive a deficit of love, when in actuality they are deficient in the practical implements and the shared resolve to surmount the obstacle. Love, therefore, is most judiciously apprehended as a potent catalyst, a magnificent point of departure, and an indispensable constituent of a fulfilling union. It can inspire us, galvanize us, and imbue the journey with profound joy. However, it cannot supplant fundamental compatibility, mutual regard, or individual maturity. One can cherish another with the entirety of their being, yet if their core values are antithetical, if their life aspirations are incongruous, or if their behavioral patterns are in perpetual contention, that love will be strained to its breaking point. It is akin to falling profoundly in love with an individual who is fundamentally deleterious to one's well-being, someone whose presence consistently diminishes or inflicts pain. Loving them does not magically render them beneficial. This leads us to a critical inquiry that any individual embarking upon a serious relationship must pose. Is this endeavor worthwhile? Even in the presence of love, are the requisite sacrifices, the demanded compromises, and the ongoing exertion sustainable and conducive to one's personal welfare? The fairy tale rarely broaches this question. It presumes that if one loves another, the answer is invariably affirmative. In reality, however, while love can alleviate the burden of sacrifice, it does not render such sacrifices inherently justifiable or salubrious. We must meticulously assess the cost and the benefit, not solely to the relationship, but to ourselves as individuals. A salubrious partnership ought to enhance one's existence, not diminish it, even if it necessitates effort. By comprehending the profound chasm that separates the idealized fantasy of love from its tangible, often arduous, reality, we can commence to recalibrate our focus. Rather than pursuing an elusive, all-consuming sensation that may or may not materialize, we can begin to proactively construct a relationship grounded in intention, respect, and a shared commitment to growth. This represents the trajectory towards a truly enduring partnership, one that is not beholden to the caprices of emotion, but to the unyielding fortitude of a well-constructed foundation. This is the essence of transcending the fairy tale and embracing the richness of genuine affection. 2. Beyond romantic feelings, we are frequently told that love is the panacea. It is the ubiquitous refrain in cinematic narratives, the constant hum in musical compositions, and the recurring theme in a litany of stories. The notion that an overwhelming, instantaneous surge of connection is the linchpin of an idyllic partnership is so deeply embedded within us. This is the gilded version of love, a mystical force that sweeps one off their feet, rectifies all imperfections, and guarantees a perpetual state of bliss. It is an intoxicating premise, is it not? The allure of finding that singular individual, of experiencing that electrifying spark, and thereby dissolving all relational discord as if by magic. Yet, let us confront this with unvarnished honesty. While that initial effervescence, that tempest of potent emotion, can be profoundly exhilarating and exquisitely beautiful, it is often predicated on a considerable degree of conjecture. We project our aspirations and fantasies onto the other person. We perceive what we desire to perceive. This is not to invalidate the authenticity of those feelings. They are, indeed, real. They represent a formidable, primal impetus that can draw two souls together. However, to anchor the longevity of a relationship solely upon these sentiments is akin to constructing a domicile upon shifting sands. When the initial fervor inevitably recedes, and it invariably does, the very foundation begins to disintegrate. Consider this dispassionately. This potent, disorienting sensation can, at times, render us blind. It can compel us to disregard ominous portents, to overlook profound divergences, and even to condone behaviors that are detrimental to our well-being. We might rationalize, but my love for them is so profound. That is what truly matters. It is precisely here that our cultural discourse does us a profound disservice. It indoctrinates us to pursue the sensation, the intensity, the grand romantic gesture, and to believe that this feeling alone is sufficient to surmount any obstacle. The tangible repercussions of this oversight manifest as relationships that commence with a spectacular flourish only to languish and expire with a pathetic whimper, leaving in their wake a residue of bewilderment and heartbreak. Individuals ponder, how could this have transpired? We were so deeply in love. The often unspoken truth is that the love was genuine, but it lacked any substantive underpinning. This, unequivocally, is the juncture at which the concept of a realistic relationship foundation assumes paramount significance. It is not an endeavor to diminish the intrinsic value of love, but rather to apprehend that love, in isolation, constitutes an incomplete architectural plan for a flourishing partnership. It is an indispensable component, unquestionably, but it necessitates the incorporation of other elements to forge something genuinely enduring. Differentiate, if you will, between a thrilling, emotionally tempestuous roller coaster and steadfast, unyielding terrain. The roller coaster presents extreme ascents and terrifying descents. It is exhilarating, unpredictable, and capable of holding one captive to the edge of their seat. A great many relationships, propelled by fervent romantic sentiments, operate along these precarious lines. There are moments of ardent passion, followed by dramatic conflagrations, periods of intense reconciliation, and subsequently, a recurrence of conflict. This emotional volatility can become insidiously addictive. The highs are so potent, so profoundly gratifying, that they can render the lows bearable, even requisite. One might surmise, this intensity must signify a profound connection. Yet, more often than not, this very intensity is an indicator that underlying issues remain unaddressed. It is a cyclical pattern of elation and despair that merely masks a deficit of genuine stability. Now envision solid ground. It may not possess the same dramatic peaks and valleys. It is steady, dependable, and predictable. This is the dominion of a salubrious relationship constructed upon a robust foundation. There may not be a perpetual cascade of fireworks, but there exists a profound sense of tranquility, security, and trust. One possesses an unshakable understanding of their position. One can depend upon their partner. This is not to suggest that healthy relationships are inherently dull. Far from it. They possess their own unique depths of joy, their own particular forms of passion, but these are cultivated upon a bedrock of shared comprehension and mutual esteem, rather than solely on ephemeral emotional tempests. One of the most perilous fallacies we obstinately embrace is the belief that love is an infallible arbiter of problems. We are convinced that if two individuals are genuinely enamored, they are capable of surmounting any impediment. This is a comforting thought, yet it is also profoundly fallacious. Love can furnish the impetus, it can imbue one with fortitude, and it can cultivate the desire to navigate through difficulties. But love, in and of itself, does not magically resolve fundamental incompatibilities. It does not obliterate divergent worldviews, disparate life aspirations, or deeply ingrained personality conflicts. If procreation is a desire and your partner harbors an absolute aversion to it, love alone will not bridge that chasm. If one party prioritizes financial security above all else, while the other embodies a free spirit disinclined towards meticulous planning, love may facilitate a period of tolerance, but it will not, by some enchantment, render you congruent in that regard. In fact, there are instances where love can actively engender complications. When we are deeply infatuated, We can become predisposed to compromising our own principles, to overlooking mistreatment, or to neglecting our own needs and overall well-being. We might rationalize, "It is worth it for love," or "They do not truly mean it. They simply love me." This is a perilous trajectory. The love in such a context is not nurturing, it is demanding, and it can precipitate a gradual erosion of self-respect. This leads us to a critical juncture. Self-respect and dignity are non-negotiable. They constitute the absolute bedrock of a healthy individual and, consequently, the bedrock of a healthy partnership. If a relationship necessitates the forfeiture of your dignity, the persistent feeling of being diminished, or the abandonment of your fundamental sense of self, then that purported love is not serving you. It is actively harming you. True love, the kind that forms the very essence of a realistic relationship foundation, should augment your sense of self-worth, not diminish it. It should empower you, making you feel more capable and more wholly yourself. This assertion is powerfully illuminated by the juxtaposition of John Lennon and Trent Reznor, despite the inherent complexity and nuance nature of their respective narratives, which resist simple categorization. Lennon, a cultural luminary, frequently espoused love as an all-consuming, almost transcendent force, a guiding principle capable of transcending all earthly concerns. His lyrical compositions often celebrated this ideal of absolute, all-encompassing affection. Yet his personal life, as meticulously documented by numerous accounts, was fraught with considerable turbulence, including periods of estrangement from his offspring and intricate relational dynamics. This is not intended as a judgment of Lennon, but rather as an observation of how even an individual who championed an idealized conception of love grappled with its practical implementation in sustaining consistent, healthy relationships over an extended duration. The intensely dramatic tenor of his relationships, while perhaps fueled by profound emotion, also suggests a reliance on the feeling itself rather than a robust, practical framework. Trent Reznor, conversely, while also an artist renowned for his intensely emotive expression, has articulated with greater candor the practicalities involved in establishing and maintaining a stable existence and partnership. In interviews, he has underscored the paramount importance of commitment, diligent effort, and mutual respect within his long-standing relationship and marital union. He does not shy away from acknowledging the inherent challenges, but his approach implies a deliberate endeavor to construct something durable, grounded in partnership and shared accountability, rather than relying solely on the ephemeral nature of romantic ardor. His focus appears to be on the action, the consistent effort and understanding required to sustain a connection rather than solely on the feeling. This distinction underscores how prioritizing the practical elements, the commitment, the respect, the shared values can foster a more enduring and stable partnership, even if it lacks the perpetual, dramatic highs characteristic of the idealized romantic narrative. The wife of a friend once imparted a simple yet profoundly insightful observation. When queried about the secret to their decades-long marital union, she eschewed poetic pronouncements about soulmates or destiny. Instead, she stated, "It is commitment and it is shared values. We determined early on what held significance for us, and we have consistently made decisions collaboratively based upon those principles." Love is indeed wonderful, but it is the commitment and the values that carry you through the arduous periods. Love is susceptible to fluctuation, but our commitment to one another and to our shared convictions has remained unwavering. Her words perfectly encapsulate the essence of constructing a realistic relationship foundation. It involves recognizing that while love provides the exquisite melody, commitment and shared values constitute the robust rhythm section that sustains the music, even when the melody becomes somewhat intricate. Thus, how does the cultural fixation on romantic sentiments actively impede individuals from discerning genuine relational compatibility? It achieves this by establishing a spurious benchmark. We are conditioned to seek the spark, the chemistry, the sensation of being destined. When these are present, we frequently cease our scrutiny. We presume that because the emotions are so potent, all other aspects must be harmoniously aligned. This leads us to neglect critical inquiries regarding core values, life objectives, communication modalities, and our approaches to conflict resolution. We may experience an intense attraction to an individual, but if their fundamental beliefs concerning family, finances, or existence itself diverge drastically from our own, that initial spark will ultimately extinguish, leaving behind a chasm of incompatibility. The tangible consequences of this oversight are relationships that are, from their inception, predisposed to failure because the foundational elements were never adequately assessed. Individuals invest years, emotional capital, and at times, financial resources into relationships that were fundamentally misaligned from the outset, all due to mistaking intense emotion for true compatibility. Beyond the initial spark, what specific, observable behaviors and foundational elements ought individuals to prioritize when evaluating a potential long-term partner, and why do these serve as more reliable indicators of enduring success? Instead of fixating on the intensity of your feelings for someone, concentrate on their actions. Observe their consistency. Are they benevolent not only towards you, but also towards others, particularly those who can offer them no tangible benefit? How do they navigate stress and conflict? Do they communicate with openness and candor, or do they resort to passive aggression or obstinate silence? Do they honor your boundaries, even when they diverge from your own perspectives? Prioritize shared values. This does not necessitate universal agreement on every matter, but rather a congruent outlook on the significant aspects: family, fiscal, management, personal development, ethical principles, and the nature of the life you aspire to construct. These are the silent architects of your shared future. Seek out mutual respect. This entails valuing each other's opinions, even in the presence of disagreement, and treating one another with inherent dignity. It signifies acknowledging that your partner is an autonomous individual, possessing their own thoughts, emotions, and requisites, rather than merely an extension of yourself. These elements serve as more dependable indicators of lasting success because they are not subject to the caprices of emotion. Feelings are mutable. They can be influenced by external stimuli, by our own internal states, or by the natural ebb and flow inherent in a long-term connection. However, commitment, respect, and shared values are conscious choices. They are deliberate decisions that partners make on a daily basis to cultivate and sustain their relationship. They provide the stable ground, the reliable framework, that allows love to flourish and endure, rather than being a fleeting sensation that evaporates at the first significant challenge. While the intoxicating surge of romantic sentiment may draw us in, it is the quiet fortitude of shared values, mutual respect, and unwavering commitment that truly anchors a relationship. Comprehending that love is not a passive state of arrival, but an active, continuous construction project is the inaugural step towards building something capable of withstanding life's inevitable tempests. But what, precisely, does this active construction entail? It commences with a clear apprehension of the materials we introduce to the endeavor our very selves. 3. Love's limitations. The songs and stories of our culture often sing of love as the singular, all-sufficient currency of human connection, a beautiful, simple notion that if only one finds that kindred spirit, that soul whose rhythm perfectly echoes one's own, then all other worldly concerns will simply resolve themselves. This sentiment, ancient and pervasive, has been whispered in sonnets and proclaimed from silver screens, encapsulated most famously in the anthem that became a global phenomenon. All you need is love. Its enduring appeal lies in its tap into a profound human yearning for a world where love is the ultimate panacea, where its abundance dissolves all troubles like frost under a benevolent sun. It's a comforting, almost magical, promise. However, the unvarnished truth, often obscured by the effervescent haze of romantic idealism, is stark. Love, in its purest form, is insufficient. This is not to diminish its profound significance. Love is the incandescent spark, the vital warmth, the profound resonance that imbues life with meaning and fosters a sense of being truly seen and understood. It is the very genesis of attraction, the magnetic pull that draws two souls together. Without it, any relationship would inevitably feel hollow, a vessel devoid of its essential spirit. Yet, to entrust the entirety of a relationship's endurance to love alone is akin to constructing a dwelling upon shifting sands. The foundation, inherently unstable, will inevitably succumb to the inevitable tempests, leading to its collapse. This ingrained cultural narrative, the potent belief that love is the supreme solution capable of surmounting any obstacle, wields considerable influence. It fosters a dangerous complacency, a conviction that the sheer force of mutual affection renders other considerations secondary. The thought we love each other so much, we can handle anything, becomes a shield, albeit a fragile one, against the practicalities of sustained partnership. This conviction can prove perilous, lulling us into neglecting the diligent, often unglamorous, work that a genuine, enduring relationship demands. It elevates ephemeral feelings above concrete realities, suggesting that emotion alone can mend fissures that require deliberate effort and profound understanding. It is at this juncture, when the romantic ideal confronts the unyielding demands of daily life, that its inherent fragility is revealed. Consider the perspective of musician Trent Reznor. In his candid reflections on relationships, he offers a markedly different viewpoint from the simplistic "all you need is love" paradigm. Reznor suggests that while love is an undeniable facet of existence, it is neither the sole determinant nor, at times, even the paramount one. His outlook reflects an understanding of life's intricate tapestry and the even more complex weave of human relationships. This more grounded perspective acknowledges the potent force of emotion, but wisely recognizes that feelings do not spontaneously engineer compatibility or resolve inherent differences. This is precisely where the concept of a realistic relationship foundation becomes indispensable. It is about the deliberate construction of something robust and enduring, a structure capable of withstanding life's inevitable vicissitudes, rather than relying solely on the fleeting exhilaration of nascent affection. This foundation is built upon pillars such as unwavering mutual respect, a profound and demonstrable commitment to one another, and the alignment of deeply held values. It necessitates open, honest communication, unwavering trust, and the capacity for shared growth while preserving individual autonomy. Love can indeed be a glorious component of this foundation, but it cannot, nor should it, constitute the entirety of the edifice. Let us delve into why the mere sensation of being in love is insufficient to guarantee a thriving relationship. The initial stages of romantic entanglement are often characterized by an intense emotional effervescence, a powerful sense of connection, and deep attraction. This feeling can be so overwhelming that it renders us oblivious to potential incompatibilities that may surface later. The prevailing thought, "our love is so strong, it's all that truly matters," can eclipse critical assessments. But what if fundamental divergences exist regarding financial management, or differing philosophies on child-rearing, or divergent aspirations for one's life journey? Love, by itself, does not magically harmonize these significant life choices. Indeed, the very intensity of love can paradoxically encourage us to disregard these disparities, assuming they will resolve themselves organically. Imagine the exhilarating, adrenaline-fueled ascent and descent of a roller coaster. This is akin to the intoxicating rush of falling in love, an experience of pure, unadulterated thrill. However, the roller coaster's journey is inherently transient. It eventually decelerates and comes to a halt. A relationship, in contrast, is not a fleeting amusement ride. It is more akin to the meticulous construction of a sturdy dwelling. It demands more than just the initial excitement of the ride. It requires resilient walls, a secure roof, and an unshakable foundation. If one relies solely on the roller coaster's thrill, the inevitable slowing of that emotional momentum can leave one stranded in an unforeseen landscape, confronted by challenges for which one is entirely unprepared. Love can provide the initial exhilaration, but the realistic relationship foundation is the enduring structure, meticulously built for longevity. Within the discourse on love's inherent limitations, one of the most insidious pitfalls is the notion that personal identity must be sacrificed at the altar of affection. We are all familiar with narratives, perhaps even personal anecdotes, of individuals who have renounced their aspirations, altered their very essence, or compromised their fundamental convictions to appease a beloved. Here, love can transmute from a benevolent force into a destructive one. Authentic love should never necessitate the forfeiture of one's dignity or self-respect. It should never compel one to inhabit a persona that is not one's own. Consider this analogy. One's self-respect and sense of identity are akin to precious, finite resources. Their depletion, whether through gradual erosion or outright appropriation by another, will inevitably lead to their exhaustion. Love's purpose is to amplify one's sense of self, to fortify it, not to diminish it. If a relationship constricts one's spirit, sanctions disrespect, or demands the compromise of core values, then that love is fundamentally detrimental. It is not a healthy love. It is a love that necessitates self-abnegation, a forced conformity to an imposed mold. Such a dynamic is unsustainable. While finding a love again is often possible, the recovery of a fractured sense of self is a far more arduous undertaking. Another critical limitation of love lies in its inherent inability to bridge fundamental ideological chasms. It is not uncommon for individuals to develop profound affection for someone whose worldview, core principles, or life ambitions stand in stark opposition to their own. While love may foster an emotional resonance, it cannot magically transmute a person's fundamental nature or their long-term desires. For instance, one might cherish a partner dearly, but if they harbor a deeply ingrained belief in the acceptability of mistreating others, or if they lack the drive to cultivate a stable future, love alone will not rectify these profound divergences. These are not trivial disagreements amenable to simple reconciliation. These represent core differences that fundamentally shape one's perception of the world and one's trajectory through life. Attempting to forcibly align two fundamentally incompatible paths through the sole agency of love is akin to attempting to blend oil and water, expecting a homogeneous liquid. They will invariably remain distinct. While compromise is a cornerstone of any successful relationship, when differences strike at the very heart of one's being and one's convictions, love's capacity to bridge them is finite, ultimately leading to its strain and potential rupture. How, then, does this pervasive cultural narrative of love conquers all actively impede individuals from cultivating the essential skills and awareness necessary for enduring relationship success? It achieves this by fostering a deceptive sense of security. When we are convinced that love is a self-sufficient force, we cease actively seeking out other vital qualities. We may disregard glaring warning signs, so captivated are we by the intoxicating sensation of being in love. The imperative to develop effective communication skills, to master healthy conflict resolution, or to diligently cultivate trust may be neglected, under the misguided assumption that love will inherently manage these complexities. This passive posture leaves us ill-equipped to confront the inevitable challenges that arise in any long-term partnership. We become analogous to students who believe they can pass an examination through sheer aspiration, without engaging in the requisite study. The cultural myth exhorts us to wish. Life, however, demands diligent study, consistent practice, and deliberate construction. Beyond the initial surge of emotion, what specific categories of fundamental incompatibilities does love demonstrably fail to overcome, and why? Is it paramount for individuals to recognize these limitations prior to making profound commitments? Love cannot surmount a pervasive lack of respect. If one partner consistently belittles, dismisses, or demeans the other, love will not spontaneously eradicate such behavior. It cannot bridge vastly divergent life trajectories. If one individual harbors a deep-seated desire for domesticity and family, while the other is committed to a nomadic existence, devoid of roots, love may engender sorrow over their differences, but it will not dissolve those differences. It cannot overcome a fundamental divergence in core values, such as honesty, integrity, or one's overarching perception of reality. If one person adheres to an absolutist conception of truth, while the other views truth as relative and deems deception acceptable when convenient, love will prove incapable of bridging such a chasm. It is crucial to apprehend these limitations before embarking on deep commitment, particularly marriage, as such incompatibilities become exponentially more formidable to navigate and can precipitate profound unhappiness and eventual separation. We frequently fall in love with an idealized construct of a person, or with the exhilarating sensations they evoke, rather than with the tangible reality of their being and their genuine aspirations. A realistic relationship foundation necessitates a discerning gaze that penetrates the romantic veil and rigorously assesses these fundamental aspects. It compels us to pose challenging inquiries, to meticulously observe behavior, and to ascertain whether our life paths are truly convergent, not merely our heart's inclinations. Understanding these limitations constitutes not an indictment of love itself, but rather an urgent call to embrace a more mature and resilient definition of partnership. It is an acknowledgement that love, while a vital constituent, must be harmoniously integrated with other essential elements to forge something truly enduring and fulfilling. The subsequent imperative is to meticulously examine these crucial, love-complementary elements, commencing with the bedrock of unwavering commitment. 4. The role of self-respect. The prevailing wisdom often champions love as life's ultimate prize. Fairy tales paint it as an invincible force, the singular catalyst that orchestrates all other elements into perfect harmony. Yet, in the stark reality of our lives, this idealized notion can morph into a perilous snare. It whispers the seductive lie that profound affection grants license to surrender all our desires, our possessions, our very selves, in a desperate bid to salvage a relationship. Such a mindset insidiously erodes something inestimably precious, our inherent sense of self-worth. Consider this. Would you countenance mistreatment from a friend? You would instinctively erect a boundary, articulate your displeasure, or perhaps even sever ties if your concerns were consistently disregarded. Yet, when ensnared by romantic entanglements, we often find ourselves lowering the bar. We may tolerate being overlooked, belittled, or having our deepest emotions casually dismissed, rationalizing it with the refrain, "But I love them so much." This is the insidious genesis of the love is enough fallacy, a myth that inflicts genuine harm. It emboldens us to relinquish our self-respect, our dignity, and even our core principles in a misguided attempt to sustain a faltering affection. This is not the architecture of a robust partnership. It is the slow dismantling of the very individual meant to be its cornerstone. Self-respect functions as an internal sentinel, an innate alarm system that delineates the permissible from the unacceptable. When you genuinely regard yourself with esteem, you inherently grasp the significance of your feelings, the validity of your perspectives, and the importance of your needs. This profound understanding forms the bedrock upon which healthy boundaries are established. Boundaries are not exclusionary ramparts designed to repel others. Rather, they are navigational charts that safeguard your well-being and articulate your expectations for how you deserve to be treated. A robust self-regard naturally fosters the clarity and conviction needed to communicate these boundaries effectively. You will be less inclined to endure perpetual denigration or the incessant draining of your time and energy, heedless of your own vital needs. This self-respect is the indispensable first step in ensuring that love, if it is to be authentic, is also inherently healthy. The notion that love alone suffices frequently propels individuals into a perpetual cycle of giving and sacrificing, We may cling to the delusion, if only I try harder, if only my love were deeper, they would transform. Or if I relinquish this facet of myself, their happiness will blossom, and our union will be fortified. This is a profoundly damaging illusion. Authentic love does not demand your diminution. It does not necessitate the abandonment of your essence or the forsaking of that which defines your identity. Instead, a healthy love should elevate you, inspiring you to embody your most authentic and flourishing self. When you find yourself consistently surrendering aspects of your being or tolerating conduct that diminishes you, it is not a testament to profound love. It is an indictment of your eroding self-respect. This self-inflicted damage does not fortify a relationship, it hollows it out from within. It is akin to constructing an exquisite edifice upon a foundation of shifting sand, visually appealing for a time, but ultimately destined for collapse. Consider this sobering truth. Love, in its myriad forms, can be rediscovered. Should a relationship conclude, the passage of time and the process of healing can indeed reopen your heart to the possibility of love once more. However, your self-respect, your dignity, and the fundamental conviction of your own identity are far more delicate constructs. Once these are profoundly compromised, their restoration can become an arduous and protracted odyssey. Picture an individual who has endured relentless belittlement or the insidious erosion of their worth within a relationship. They may gradually internalize these toxic pronouncements, beginning to believe them as truth. Reclaiming that inner fortitude, that unwavering belief in one's inherent value, demands an immense expenditure of effort. It is a far more arduous, and often more agonizing, undertaking than finding a new romantic companion. This is precisely why safeguarding your self-respect is not an act of selfishness. It is an act of profound self-preservation. It is about the vigilant protection of your very core. There exists an undeniable, direct correlation between the magnitude of your self-respect and the quality of respect you garner from others, including your romantic partner. When you fail to accord yourself due value, you may inadvertently transmit signals that your boundaries are negotiable or that your needs can be readily disregarded. This can foster a subtle, or perhaps not so subtle, dynamic wherein your partner's disrespect becomes normalized. You might find yourself questioning your own perceptions, thinking, perhaps I am overreacting, or it's not truly that significant. This can precipitate a pernicious cycle of escalating disrespect. Conversely, when you carry yourself with an unshakable sense of self-respect, it naturally cultivates mutual regard from your partner. They perceive your self-valuation, and this understanding fosters their own appreciation of your worth. This is not a posture of arrogance. It is the quiet confidence born of an intrinsic awareness of your own value. Thus, how does one nurture and sustain this vital self-respect within the intricate tapestry of a relationship? It commences with a conscious attunement to one's own thoughts and feelings. When you detect an undercurrent of unease, hurt, or resentment, lend it your full attention. These emotions are not random occurrences, they are potent signals. They are your inner self communicating that something is amiss. The initial practical step is to simply acknowledge these feelings without censure. Resist the urge to immediately suppress them or to chastise yourself for being overly sensitive. Instead, pose the introspective question, what is this feeling endeavoring to convey to me? Having acknowledged your emotions, the subsequent imperative is to articulate them. This is often a point of considerable trepidation for many. We harbor anxieties about upsetting our partner, igniting conflict, or being perceived as demanding. However, healthy communication is the indispensable cornerstone of a realistic relational framework. It entails the clear and composed expression of your needs and feelings, employing I statements. For instance, rather than articulating, "You never listen to me," a more constructive approach would be, "I feel unheard when I'm attempting to share something significant and I need to feel that you are actively listening." This method centers on your subjective experience rather than assigning blame to your partner, thereby enhancing their receptivity. The establishment of boundaries also necessitates a willingness to utter the word no. This can prove exceptionally challenging, particularly for those inclined towards people-pleasing. However, declining an invitation that depletes your energy or contravenes your deeply held values is a potent affirmation of self-respect. It is an acknowledgement of your limitations and a commitment to honoring them. This is not an exercise in rigidity or uncooperativeness. It is about ensuring you possess the reserves of energy and the unwavering integrity to be a supportive partner over the long haul. When you perpetually acquiesce, you risk cultivating resentment and depletion, outcomes detrimental to both yourself and the relationship. Another tangible manifestation of self-respect involves the preservation of your individuality within the partnership. It is remarkably easy to become so immersed in a romantic connection that one's sense of self begins to recede. You might cease pursuing cherished hobbies, neglect vital friendships, or subtly alter your opinions to align with your partner's. While compromise is an essential component of any relationship, the erosion of one's core identity is not. Your partner was drawn to you, to your unique personality, your distinct interests, and your passionate pursuits. Continuing to cultivate these intrinsic aspects of yourself is not an act of selfishness. It is paramount for your own flourishing and for the vitality of the relationship itself. It ensures that you contribute your complete, vibrant self to the partnership, rather than a diminished echo. The prevailing cultural narrative surrounding love frequently romanticizes self-sacrifice. We are saturated with tales of individuals who relinquished all for the sake of love, and these narratives are invariably presented as noble and aspirational. Recall the archetypal stories where characters endure profound hardship, betray confidantes, or abandon their aspirations, all in love's name. This pervasive narrative actively undermines individual self-respect by suggesting that personal well-being and integrity are subordinate to romantic affection. When this belief takes root, relationships can devolve into fertile ground for mistreatment. Individuals may passively endure emotional abuse, relentless criticism, or infidelity, all while reassuring themselves that their love possesses sufficient fortitude to surmount such transgressions. The tangible consequence is not a strengthened bond, but a profoundly damaged individual and a relationship constructed upon an unstable, unhealthy foundation. The person who surrenders their self-respect often finds themselves steeped in resentment, unfulfilled, and virtually invisible, while the partner may grow accustomed to this imbalance, oblivious to the damage being inflicted. When we speak of constructing a realistic relational foundation, self-respect transcends mere desirability. It is an absolute prerequisite. It serves as the internal compass that guides us toward judicious choices and steers us away from destructive paths. It is the quiet strength that empowers us to articulate our needs, establish boundaries, and safeguard our individuality. In its absence, even the most fervent romantic sentiments can lead us down a trajectory of self-betrayal and relational instability. The allure of romantic love is undeniably potent, but its true potential is only fully realized when it is anchored to the unyielding bedrock of self-respect. Without this intrinsic foundation, even the most passionate connections risk disintegration under the immense pressure of compromise and self-deception. But what transpires when this internal edifice is compromised by external forces, or when our understanding of a good partner is distorted by unrealistic expectations? This prompts an examination of the critical role shared values play in forging a truly enduring connection. Chapter 2. Building Strong Relationships. 1. Keeping your identity. The intoxicating rush of falling in love, a potent force capable of sweeping aside all obstacles, often feels like the ultimate aspiration. This beautiful, frequently overwhelming sensation is easily understood as the pinnacle of human connection. Yet, this intense feeling, while wonderful, can also blind us, fostering the belief that the sheer power of love will somehow smooth over every rough edge and resolve all discord. This conviction, however, is a perilous myth. Enduring relationships are not conjured from emotion alone. They demand a robust, practical bedrock. This foundation, which we shall term the realistic relationship foundation, comprises elements such as respect, unwavering commitment, aligned values, and the quiet, persistent work of genuine understanding and mutual support. It is about constructing something solid, painstakingly, rather than relying solely on the ephemeral magic of sustained passion. One of the most insidious ways this myth misleads us is through the subtle, often imperceptible, erosion of our individual selves. In the nascent stages of infatuation, everything feels novel and exhilarating. A natural inclination arises to spend more time with the object of our affection, to absorb every facet of their being, and to intertwine our lives. This is fundamentally positive, the very mechanism by which connection is forged. However, this inherent drive can easily devolve into an unhealthy insularity, where us begins to signify the exclusion of the wider world. Our friends, our passions, even our personal aspirations may start to seem secondary to the time spent with our partner. This is the insidious us versus them trap, where them encompasses all that lies beyond the romantic sphere. Consider Sarah and Mark. Upon their meeting, they were inseparable. Mark was captivated by Sarah's whimsical humor and her ardent devotion to painting. Sarah, in turn, found herself drawn to Mark's adventurous spirit and his profound love for hiking. In their initial phase, their shared enthusiasm propelled them into a constant stream of joint endeavors, from weekend art exhibitions to challenging mountain treks. Yet, as their relationship deepened and the initial effervescence settled into a comfortable cadence, a subtle transformation began. Mark's hiking excursions became increasingly infrequent. He would often lament, "It's not the same without you, Sarah," or profess, "I'd rather simply unwind with you tonight." Sarah, likewise, found herself fabricating excuses to her friends when invitations to gallery openings arose. "Mark isn't really into that," she'd demur, "or we already have plans." Their collective world began to contract, focusing exclusively on each other. At first glance, this might appear as a testament to profound love, a clear indication of their desire for perpetual togetherness. But what was truly transpiring? They were, inadvertently and incrementally, relinquishing portions of themselves. Mark ceased to challenge himself on those demanding hikes, and Sarah's exposure to novel artistic expressions and intellectual currents dwindled. Their absorption in beingness led them to neglect the cultivation of I. This is not an isolated narrative. It is a prevalent pitfall. When we withdraw from our individual existences, we become akin to two vines entwined so tightly that they eventually stifle each other. The relationship becomes the sole conduit for social interaction, emotional sustenance, and personal purpose. This places an immense, unsustainable pressure upon the partnership. Should the relationship falter, even minutely, it can feel as though one's entire world is imploding, with no other anchor to provide support. This is precisely where the concept of the realistic relationship foundation assumes paramount importance. It serves as a crucial reminder that while love is an indispensable component, it is not the entirety of the equation. A robust foundation signifies an understanding that a healthy partnership does not necessitate the abandonment of one's individuality. Indeed, the opposite holds true. Your identity, your unique enthusiasms, your cherished friendships, your personal aspirations is not a disposable entity to be shed upon entering a relationship. It is the very essence of what makes you, you. And it is this very essence that renders you a more compelling, more complete individual with whom to share one's life. A salubrious relationship should amplify, not obliterate, your identity. It should foster an environment where you feel empowered to flourish as an individual, rather than coerced into becoming someone else. Consider the subtle manifestations of this merging, often misconstrued as profound love or unwavering commitment. It is not invariably characterized by a dramatic severance of friendships. At times, it manifests as the gradual adoption of your partner's musical preferences, even in the absence of genuine enjoyment. Or perhaps you begin to downplay your own perspectives on contentious issues because your partner holds such fervent convictions. You might find yourself nodding in agreement, aligning with their political stances or their worldview, not from authentic conviction, but because it appears less arduous, or because you perceive it will bring your partner greater happiness. This is not compromise. It is a slow capitulation of one's own thoughts and sentiments. Picture a couple like Emily and David. They were deeply enamored, and David had always possessed a somewhat sedentary disposition, favoring tranquil evenings and predictable routines. Emily, conversely, thrived on novel experiences, reveled in impromptu road trips, and maintained an extensive circle of friends perpetually eager for adventure. Upon their union, Emily initially attempted to reshape David, urging him to partake in her escapades. When he demurred, she experienced disappointment, and he felt besieged. Over time, Emily began to adapt. She found herself increasingly appreciating quieter evenings, not from genuine preference, but from a desire for David's contentment. She ceased orchestrating those spontaneous excursions, rationalizing that perhaps she was simply too restless. Her inherent vivacity seemed to wane, supplanted by a more subdued, less effervescent version of herself. David, meanwhile, experienced a twinge of guilt, recognizing that Emily was not as content as she once was, yet he remained uncertain how to rectify the situation, and perhaps he failed to fully comprehend his role in her transformation. They had merged, but it was not a harmonious fusion, it was Emily's distinct radiance being extinguished. This underscores precisely why the realistic relationship foundation places such emphasis on self-awareness. It is about discerning the demarcation between healthy negotiation and the erosion of one's fundamental self. Compromise entails a mutual concession, a collaborative effort to discover a resolution that satisfies both parties. It is an exercise in negotiation and the identification of common ground. Erosion, however, occurs when one individual habitually relinquishes their own needs, desires, or principles to placate the other or to circumvent discord. It is a unilateral sacrifice that leaves one party feeling depleted and resentful, while the other may remain oblivious to the extent of the imbalance. One of the most telling indicators of whether you are preserving your individuality within a relationship is the vitality of your personal friendships. Our friends are often those who know us most intimately, who have witnessed our evolution through various life stages. They serve as our mirrors, reflecting back to us our true selves. If your partner actively discourages your interactions with your friends, or if you find yourself perpetually fabricating excuses to avoid them, this constitutes a significant warning sign. It indicates that the relationship is becoming excessively insular, overly reliant on its own internal validation. Reflect upon this. Would you tolerate a friend who consistently disparaged your partner or attempted to isolate you from your family? Assuredly not. Yet, within romantic relationships, we frequently acquiesce to behaviors that we would never countenance in our friendships. If your friends express apprehension regarding your well-being, if they perceive a discernible alteration in your demeanor that causes them concern, or if they feel as though they are losing you to your relationship, it is imperative to heed their counsel. These external perspectives can offer invaluable insight. They can serve as a potent reminder of your own values and illuminate whether your partner's influence is constructive or detrimental. The preservation of one's friendships and personal pursuits is not an act of fostering distance or instigating conflict. It is an endeavor in achieving equilibrium. It is predicated on the understanding that your partner enriches your existence, but they are not destined to be your entire existence. It is entirely possible to cultivate profound, meaningful connections with your partner and maintain robust bonds with your friends. You can pursue your individual passions and aspirations and collaboratively construct a life together. This necessitates conscious effort, transparent communication, and a mutual reverence for each other's need for personal space and individual fulfillment. How, then, can one actively nurture these distinct facets of one's life without generating friction? It commences with open dialogue. Engage in conversations with your partner about the significance of these friendships and hobbies. Articulate that the intention is not to create a dichotomy between them and your partner, but rather to embody a more complete and contented individual, a state that ultimately benefits the relationship. Allocate dedicated time for your friends and your interests, much as you schedule time for your partner. Furthermore, encourage your partner to do likewise. A partner who genuinely champions your growth will celebrate your individual triumphs and champion your personal endeavors. Consider Maya and Liam. Maya was a driven architect with aspirations of designing her own sustainable housing initiatives. Liam was a gifted musician who found joy in performing in intimate jazz clubs. Upon falling in love, both were ardently committed to their respective vocations. Liam never once suggested that Maya curtail her ambitions. Instead, he would attend her presentations, offering quiet encouragement, and would often be found sketching preliminary designs for their future abode while she worked late. Maya, in turn, would attend his performances, cheering him on from the audience, and would frequently listen to his nascent compositions, providing constructive critiques. They actively supported each other's individual trajectories, understanding that their personal development would invariably enrich their shared existence. They recognized that their relationship was a partnership, not a subsuming merger that necessitated the obliteration of their distinct selves. This leads us to a critical inquiry. What is the fundamental distinction between healthy compromise and the erosion of one's core values or identity? Healthy compromise is a dynamic exchange of give and take. It is about discovering resolutions where both individuals feel acknowledged and respected. For instance, if one partner is enamored with urban life and the other prefers rural tranquility, they might compromise by selecting a domicile in a town that offers elements of both, or by agreeing to dedicate specific weekends to each environment. This constitutes a negotiation that honors the needs of both individuals. Erosion, conversely, is a gradual attrition. It occurs when one individual consistently sacrifices their deeply held convictions, their ambitions, or their fundamental requirements to maintain harmony, or to appease their partner. If Maya, for example, had begun informing clients that her sole interest lay in designing conventional residences because Liam deemed her ambitious projects excessively taxing for her, that would represent erosion. It would signify her capitulation of core values and professional identity for the sake of her partner's comfort. Similarly, if Liam ceased composing music because Maya felt it encroached excessively upon her time, that too would constitute a loss of identity. The ability to discern these subtle indicators is paramount. Are you finding yourself perpetually offering apologies for your interests? Do you often suppress your opinions on significant matters, fearing your partner's adverse reaction? Are your friends observing a pronounced shift in your personality or your priorities, and not in a positive manner? If the responses to these questions lean towards an affirmative, it signals that your individual identity may be imperiled. The realistic relationship foundation is predicated on the understanding that a relationship should serve as a wellspring of strength and support, not a crucible where one loses oneself. Love is a formidable emotion, but it cannot substitute for the ongoing, deliberate effort required to construct a life together, a life where both individuals can flourish, both in unison and in their separate pursuits. While the safeguarding of individual identity is paramount to a resilient partnership, the subsequent, vital phase in forging and enduring bond involves the active cultivation of a shared vision. This is not about effacing individuality, but about identifying common ground and direction, ensuring that us and me are progressing toward a mutually desired future. This naturally leads us to explore the indispensable role of shared values and vision. 2. Heart and mind together. The initial surge of infatuation, that dizzying exhilaration when one encounters a person who renders the world a kaleidoscope of wonder, is a potent force. It is the very fabric of ballads and cinematic narratives, the incandescent spark that ignites the yearning for a shared horizon. This profound sentiment, This undeniable gravitational pull of the heart is not merely essential, it is the genesis. It is the catalyst for connection, the impetus for deeper inquiry, the architect of that singular bond. Without this primordial emotional resonance, this deep, often irrational, magnetism towards another soul, the vast majority of unions would remain unborn. It is the alchemical element, the celestial dust that imbues us with the capacity for belief in the extraordinary. Yet, a truth, often obscured by the opalescent mist of romance, demands our attention. This overwhelming sensation, this thrumming of the heart, is but the prologue. It is the exquisite ignition that sparks a conflagration, but it cannot, in isolation, sustain that blaze through the long arc of a lifetime. To forge something truly enduring, something resilient enough to withstand life's inevitable tempests and its quiet, contemplative interludes, we require more than the mere warmth of emotion. We necessitate the steady, guiding influence of our mind. Envision the construction of a dwelling. The heart acts as the impassioned architect, conjuring a breathtaking design replete with abundant light, inviting warmth and vistas of unparalleled beauty. It embodies the awe and elation experienced upon first beholding the blueprints. The mind, however, assumes the mantle of the engineer and the artisan. It is the discerning intellect that meticulously plans the foundation, selects the appropriate materials, ensures the structural integrity, and guarantees the functionality of the essential utilities. A design may possess unparalleled magnificence, but if its foundation is infirm or its materials are of dubious quality, the edifice is destined for eventual collapse. The same principle applies to relationships. The heart furnishes the vision and the ardor, while the mind provides the pragmatic fortitude and the architectural schematics for a life harmoniously shared. This is the juncture where the concept of a realistic relationship foundation assumes paramount significance. It does not advocate for the dimming of romantic luminescence or the suppression of our deepest feelings. Rather, it champions the understanding that love, while indispensable, must be buttressed by an abundance of sensible, practical building blocks. These components are the elements that our minds recognize as indispensable for enduring well-being, qualities such as mutual respect, unwavering commitment, congruent values, and the cultivated capacity for constructive dialogue, even in the face of adversity. These are not the ostentatious, thrilling accoutrements that capture public acclaim, but they are the robust structural beams and the unyielding walls that provide unwavering support. Frequently, during the nascent stages of falling in love, our hearts resonate with such deafening intensity that our minds struggle to be heard. We may experience an overwhelming sense of connection, an unshakable conviction of this is it. This feeling can be so compelling that it eclipses any nascent doubts or rational apprehensions. We perceive what we ardently desire to perceive, and we tend to disregard any discordant elements that disrupt the idealized tableau we have meticulously crafted within our consciousness. This is the peril of granting the heart-soul dominion. It can lead us to become enamored with individuals who, while capable of eliciting a profound emotional response, are fundamentally misaligned with our long-term aspirations. We may be drawn to a person's charisma, their passion, or even their vulnerability, but our minds must pose the more profound inquiries. Do our core values intersect? Do our life objectives converge? How do they navigate adversity or conflict? Do they extend kindness to others? These are not conventionally romantic interrogations, yet they are absolutely critical for the construction of a shared existence. Consider the narrative of Sarah and Mark. From the instant their paths converged, an undeniable spark ignited. Sarah found herself captivated by Mark's adventurous spirit and his uncanny ability to elicit laughter that brought tears to her eyes. Mark, in turn, was drawn to Sarah's quiet resilience and her contemplative demeanor. Their shared experiences were characterized by spontaneous excursions, protracted nocturnal conversations, and an effortless sense of mutual understanding. Sarah felt perceived and comprehended in a manner she had never previously encountered. Mark experienced a profound sense of tranquility and belonging in Sarah's presence. Their hearts sang in perfect consonance. However, as their relationship deepened, subtle fissures began to manifest, not due to an erosion of affection, but because their minds had remained unduly quiescent. Sarah was a meticulous planner, a proponent of stability and predictability. She thrived on a clearly defined trajectory for the future, punctuated by concrete steps to achieve her objectives. Mark, conversely, embodied the spirit of a free agent. He espoused the philosophy of embracing serendipity, seizing opportunities as they presented themselves, and eschewing excessive preoccupation with minutiae. This divergence, which initially appeared as a charming counterpoint, her steadiness complementing his spontaneity, gradually engendered friction. In matters of fiscal management, for instance, Sarah advocated for a meticulously crafted budget, a robust savings strategy, and a lucid comprehension of their shared financial aspirations. Mark perceived budgeting as an imposition and favored allocating funds towards experiences as they arose. He would frequently undertake significant expenditures without prior consultation with Sarah, presuming her acquiescence. Sarah's heart ached, sensing a deficit in partnership and a disregard for her concerns. Her mind, however, was issuing urgent alerts. She perceived a fundamental disparity in their approaches to responsibility and future planning, core tenets of a realistic relationship foundation. On one occasion, Mark impulsively decided to allocate a substantial portion of their jointly held savings towards a speculative entrepreneurial endeavor without engaging Sarah in any discussion. He viewed it as an exhilarating prospect, an avenue for substantial financial gain. Sarah was overcome by a wave of apprehension and a sense of profound betrayal. Her heart pounded with fear and disappointment, but her mind remained lucid. This represented a significant incompatibility, an indicator that their life philosophies were too divergent to serve as the bedrock for a secure future. She apprehended that while her heart cherished Mark's inherent optimism, her mind recognized that this unbridled optimism, unchecked by pragmatic considerations, possessed the potential to jeopardize their shared existence. This is the critical juncture where the synergistic approach of heart and mind in concert becomes indispensable. It is not about Sarah renouncing Mark's adventurous spirit, nor is it about Mark disregarding Sarah's imperative for security. It is about acknowledging these inherent differences and posing the crucial question: can we bridge this chasm? Can we devise a method to integrate our respective approaches? Sarah, rather than succumbing to mere hurt, was compelled to employ her intellect to articulate her concerns with clarity and composure. She needed to elucidate why financial stability held such profound importance for her, rather than simply asserting that Mark's actions had caused her distress. Mark, in turn, was obligated to utilize his cognitive faculties to comprehend Sarah's perspective, to grasp that her inclination towards planning was not an act of control, but rather an expression of a deep-seated desire for mutual security. He had to transcend the initial exhilaration of the opportunity and contemplate its ramifications for their relationship. The mind's function in this context is not to extinguish the initial spark, but to construct a secure and robust edifice around it. It involves confronting the challenging questions, even when one's heart urges their dismissal. It entails observing behavioral patterns, not merely grand pronouncements. How does one's partner interact with service staff? How do they speak of past romantic entanglements? How do they confront disappointment? These are not inquiries steeped in romance, but they are profound indicators of character and compatibility. The mind acts as the diligent detective, gathering evidence, assessing risks, and formulating informed judgments. When we exclusively rely on our hearts, we become susceptible to the allure of infatuation, a potent yet often ephemeral emotion. Infatuation is akin to a dazzling pyrotechnic display, brilliant and exhilarating, but it rapidly expends itself. A realistic relationship foundation, meticulously constructed by both heart and mind, more closely resembles the steady, comforting glow of a hearth fire. It provides consistent solace, enduring warmth, and the illumination necessary to navigate the encroaching darkness. The deliberate choice to engage our minds within the realm of relationships is what distinguishes a transient romance from a steadfast partnership. It is the resolute decision to affirm, I harbor profound feelings for this individual, and my intention is for this connection to endure. Consequently, I shall also engage in critical thinking, communicate with unreserved candor, and actively invest in cultivating this bond. This represents the transcendence of the fairy tale narrative. Fairy tales often conclude with the pronouncement of happily ever after, implying that love itself is the ultimate panacea. However, the reality of life necessitates our active participation in the creation of that enduring felicity. We are not passive recipients of love. We are the architects of our relational destinies. This proactive construction demands a willingness to embrace vulnerability, not solely on an emotional plane, but also on an intellectual one. It entails acknowledging when comprehension falters, when reservations arise, or when potential obstacles are perceived. It necessitates engaging in arduous conversations, rather than evading them for fear of disrupting the prevailing emotional equilibrium. The mind aids us in preparing for these dialogues, in formulating our intended message, in refining our delivery, and in envisioning the desired outcome. It involves the judicious selection of words, attentive listening, and a genuine effort to understand, rather than merely to be heard. Consider how immeasurably smoother the navigation of life's inevitable vicissitudes becomes when one possesses a robust support system. The same principle applies to relationships. The emotional roller coaster is an inherent component of any protracted connection. There will be periods of profound elation juxtaposed with moments of deep sorrow, phases of intense intimacy interspersed with intervals of emotional distance. When our hearts are buffeted by these emotional tides, it is our minds that provide the steadfast anchor. They serve as a reminder of our shared history, the commitments we have undertaken, and the intrinsic value of persevering through adversity together. A relationship founded solely on fluctuating emotions is analogous to a vessel adrift without an anchor, tossed about by every passing wave. Conversely, a relationship fortified by a robust foundation can weather the most formidable storms, secure in the knowledge that the fundamental pillars of respect, trust, and shared purpose will prevent its capsizing. The mind's role also extends to fostering an understanding that love is not a perpetual state of euphoric bliss. This is a critical distinction from the archetypal fairy tale. In lived experience, the intense, passionate sentiments of the initial phase naturally evolve. They do not vanish, but rather often coalesce into a more profound, comfortable, and resilient form of affection. This mature love is sustained not merely by spontaneous emotion, but by a conscious dedication to nurturing the relationship, to continuing personal and mutual growth, and to proactively addressing challenges. It represents the divergence between a wildfire that blazes with spectacular intensity but for a fleeting duration, and the enduring, gentle luminescence of embers that can be rekindled into vibrant flames. Therefore, how can individuals effectively discern between authentic emotional compatibility, the domain of the heart, and superficial attraction, the realm of infatuation? This is where the mind emerges as our most invaluable instrument. It necessitates the cultivation of a practice characterized by mindful observation and unvarnished self-reflection. When you experience that initial spark, that compelling emotional summons, pause. Inhale deeply, and then engage your intellect. Pose specific inquiries, not to extinguish the nascent romance, but to ascertain its depth and its potential for longevity. Commence by scrutinizing behavioral patterns. Does this individual's conduct consistently align with their pronouncements? Are they dependable? Do they demonstrate consideration for your sentiments and requirements, not merely when it is convenient, but also when it entails personal inconvenience? Observe their interactions with others, particularly those who offer no tangible benefit. This reveals the true measure of their character. Does their sense of humor resonate with yours, or is it frequently at the expense of others? Do they exhibit empathy? These are not inquiries rooted in romantic convention, but they are vital indicators of a person's inner disposition. Beyond mere observation, engage in substantive discourse. Move beyond discussions of preferred cinematic productions. Delve into your apprehensions, your aspirations, and the formative experiences that have shaped your identity. Inquire about their core values. What principles guide their decision-making processes? What do they deem most significant in life? Listen not only to their responses, but also to how they articulate them. Do they appear thoughtful and self-aware, or do they adopt a defensive or dismissive posture? Are they amenable to exploring divergent perspectives, or do they rigidly adhere to their own? Crucially, appraise your own internal responses. When in the presence of this individual, do you feel at liberty to express your authentic self, or do you feel compelled to perform or conceal aspects of your personality? Do you emerge from these interactions feeling invigorated and uplifted, or drained and apprehensive? These feelings, while emotional in nature, are signals that your mind is equipped to interpret. If you consistently experience a sense of unease or the sensation of treading on delicate ground, your mind is likely detecting subtle incompatibilities that your heart, in its initial fervor, may be overlooking. The mind also aids us in differentiating between a healthy emotional connection and an unhealthy reliance or codependency. Genuine emotional compatibility signifies that two individuals can mutually support one another, celebrate each other's triumphs, and offer solace during times of tribulation, all while preserving their individual identities and personal lives. Infatuation, conversely, can sometimes manifest as an overwhelming need for the other person, a paralyzing fear of solitude, or a conviction that one's happiness is entirely contingent upon them. Your mind possesses the capacity to recognize this imbalance, this detrimental dependence, and to prompt you towards the pursuit of a more equitable and respectful connection. Now, consider the subsequent analytical prompt. In what ways does the conscious application of the mind, for example through communication strategies, conflict resolution techniques, 3. Solving problems together. Love may be the incandescent spark that ignites a connection, the magnetic pole that draws two souls into an intimate orbit. Yet, as the initial effervescence subsides and the inevitable friction of daily life grinds against the edges of shared existence, that spark alone often proves insufficient to sustain the enduring flame. It is in these moments of transition, when the honeymoon glow yields to the pragmatic demands of cohabitation, that the true architecture of a relationship begins to take shape. And at the heart of this construction lies the indispensable skill of collaborative problem solving. Consider the edifice of a sturdy dwelling. It requires a bedrock of a strong foundation, the unwavering integrity of solid walls, and the protective embrace of a reliable roof. Love, in its most radiant form, might be the exquisite hue of paint adorning its exterior, but it offers no structural support when the tempestuous storms of life descend. The capacity to confront challenges as a unified front is not an innate gift bestowed upon those who fall in love. Rather, it is a cultivated skill akin to mastering the culinary arts or achieving proficiency on a bicycle. It demands deliberate practice. Without this learned competence, even the most incandescent passion can falter and crumble. Picture Mia and Ben, a couple swept away by the intoxicating tide of their affection, utterly convinced that their love possessed an invincible power to surmount any obstacle. For a time, this conviction seemed to hold true. Then life, in its relentless unfolding, intervened. Ben experienced the crushing blow of job loss, and Mia's mother was suddenly struck by a grave illness. These were not minor inconveniences, they were seismic events that threatened to shatter their world. Instead of standing shoulder to shoulder against these formidable forces, Mia began to retreat, overwhelmed and feeling bereft of support. Ben, in turn, felt the sting of perceived blame for his inability to conjure immediate solutions even as he grappled with his own anxieties. Their love, which they had once envisioned as an impenetrable shield, began to fracture under the immense pressure. They had neglected to learn the art of solving problems together. They were confronting these crises as two isolated individuals, each adrift in their own sea of distress. This is a pervasive pitfall. We are often led to believe that profound love inherently equips couples with an intuitive understanding of how to navigate difficulties, or that love itself possesses a mystical ability to smooth over all rough terrain. The stark reality, however, is that love does not automatically furnish us with the tools necessary to mediate disagreements, manage financial anxieties, or offer solace through personal crises. These are practical proficiencies, integral components of what I term the realistic relationship foundation. In their absence, even the most profound emotional bonds can ultimately lead to the dissolution of a partnership. The couples who not only endure life's relentless storms, but emerge from them with enhanced resilience share a singular, fundamental mindset. They perceive the problem as the common adversary, not their partner. This represents a profound paradigm shift, a transformation from a stance of you versus me to one of us versus the problem. This necessitates a conscious reorientation of how we communicate and conceptualize disagreements. Instead of resorting to finger-pointing and accusatory pronouncements such as, "You always leave your socks strewn about," or "You never truly listen to me," a couple operating as a cohesive unit would adeptly reframe the situation. They might articulate, "We need to devise a more effective system for managing our laundry," or "I'm finding it challenging to feel heard in this moment. How can we ensure mutual understanding?" This subtle yet potent recalibration of language is remarkably transformative. It redirects the focus away from blame and recrimination toward collaboration and the pursuit of resolutions. Consider the inherent human response. When confronted with what feels like an attack, the primal instinct is to erect defenses, to parry and push back. This invariably constructs an invisible barrier between partners. Conversely, when a challenge is framed as a shared undertaking, an invitation is extended for your partner to stand alongside you on the same side of the battlefield. It is an unspoken declaration. This is a matter we must collectively decipher, and your contribution is essential. This approach cultivates a palpable sense of unity and reciprocal support, forming the very bedrock of our realistic relationship foundation. It is about forging a united front against the onslaught of life's adversities, rather than allowing those challenges to drive a wedge between you. This pervasive us versus the problem mentality is intrinsically intertwined with the cultivation of genuine listening and profound empathy. Before any meaningful problem solving can commence, it is imperative to possess a sincere comprehension of your partner's lived experience and emotional landscape. This transcends merely registering the words they utter. It involves an earnest attempt to inhabit their perspective, to perceive that situation through their unique lens, even when it diverges from your own. Active listening extends far beyond the passive anticipation of one's turn to speak. It demands undivided attention, the subtle affirmation of a nod, sustained eye contact, and the crucial practice of reflecting back what has been heard to ensure accurate comprehension. Phrases such as, "So, if I'm grasping your meaning correctly, you are experiencing frustration," can prove exceptionally beneficial. Empathy elevates this understanding to a deeper stratum. It is the act of acknowledging and validating your partner's emotional state. If your partner expresses hurt because they felt unsupported at a work event, even if your perception of your actions differs, empathy compels you to articulate something akin to, "I can fully appreciate why you would feel wounded and unsupported, and I am genuinely sorry that you experienced it that way." This does not imply an endorsement of their interpretation, but rather a profound recognition of their feelings as authentic and legitimate. This acknowledgement is paramount. When individuals feel genuinely heard and understood, their receptivity to collaborative problem-solving increases exponentially. Without this foundational emotional attunement, any attempt at resolution is likely to prove futile, as the underlying emotional needs remain unaddressed. This profound depth of understanding is a cornerstone of the realistic relationship foundation, enabling authentic connection to flourish even amidst disagreement. Undeniably, not every challenge yields a perfectly equitable solution where each party attains their ultimate desire. Within the crucible of healthy relationships, compromise and negotiation emerge as indispensable arts. The objective is to discover that felicitous equilibrium where both partners perceive their needs as being thoughtfully considered and genuinely respected, even if their initial preferences are not fully realized. This is the art of achieving good enough. At times, this necessitates a measured concession from one partner, balanced by a reciprocal yielding from the other. It is the inherent rhythm of give and take. The critical determinant is that these compromises are offered willingly and do not erode one's fundamental sense of self or deeply held convictions. The cautionary admonition against complete self-abnegation in the name of love finds its vital application here. Compromise is not synonymous with one individual perpetually sacrificing their happiness for the other's contentment. It is about discerning a harmonious balance that serves the well-being of both individuals. Consider, for instance, Sarah and Tom, a couple whose preferences for leisure time diverge significantly. Sarah finds solace in quiet evenings spent engrossed in books, while Tom thrives on social engagement with friends. If their leisure activities were perpetually dictated by the inclination of one, the other would inevitably experience feelings of neglect or simmering resentment. Instead, they cultivated the skill of negotiation. They might agree to designate one weekend evening for Sarah's quiet pursuits and another for Tom's social outings. Alternatively, they might actively seek out shared activities that resonate with both, such as invigorating walks or the exploration of novel culinary experiences. This endeavor demands open communication, a nuanced understanding of each other's distinct needs, and a profound willingness to embrace flexibility. It is an affirmation of the relationship as a true partnership, where the welfare of both individuals is of paramount importance. This readiness to negotiate and arrive at mutually agreeable outcomes stands as a vital pillar in the construction of a robust, realistic relationship foundation. It unequivocally demonstrates a profound valuation of the partnership, manifesting in a concerted effort to forge solutions that honor the individuality of each partner. Furthermore, it is of paramount importance to recognize the boundaries of one's own problem-solving capabilities. No couple exists as an isolated entity, and there are instances where the complexities or deeply entrenched nature of the issues at hand exceed the couple's capacity for independent resolution. In such junctures, seeking external assistance, such as couples counseling or therapy, signifies not an admission of failure, but rather a testament to strength and an unwavering commitment to the relationship's enduring health. Just as one would summon a plumber to address a persistent leak or a mechanic to rectify a malfunctioning vehicle, there are occasions when professional guidance becomes indispensable for navigating intricate relational challenges. Therapists are adeptly trained to assist couples in identifying detrimental patterns, refining communication strategies, and developing effective methodologies for conflict resolution. They provide a neutral, impartial space conducive to candid dialogue and equip individuals with tools that might otherwise remain elusive. This willingness to solicit professional intervention reinforces the understanding that relationships are dynamic constructs demanding continuous effort and, at times, expert support. It directly challenges the romanticized fallacy that love alone suffices to rectify all discord. Acknowledging the necessity of external aid represents a mature and responsible stride toward forging a more resilient, realistic relationship foundation. It unequivocally signals a proactive investment in the relationship's vitality, even when confronted with significant adversity. So, how does one translate these principles into tangible action? How do we transform into a truly effective problem-solving unit? The journey commences with heightened awareness. It requires a discerning observation of how you and your partner currently navigate disagreements. Do you tend to withdraw into silence? Do you react with unbridled anger? Do you actively circumvent conflict at all costs? Honesty, in this regard, is not merely a virtue, it is a prerequisite. Subsequently, a steadfast commitment to practicing these acquired skills is essential. Begin with modest challenges. Select a minor point of contention and consciously endeavor to implement the us versus the problem approach. Cultivate the practice of active listening. Prioritize comprehending your partner's emotional state before rushing to propose solutions. When the necessity for compromise arises, strive for the attainment of good enough rather than the elusive ideal of perfection, and never lose sight of the fact that seeking assistance is a valid and often necessary recourse. The development of these proficiencies demands both time and dedicated effort, yet the ultimate reward is a relationship that is not only more resilient, but also characterized by a profound depth and an enduring sense of fulfillment. The very act of collaboratively navigating challenges, when executed with skill and intention, transcends mere problem rectification. It actively fortifies the intrinsic bond between partners. Each instance of successfully surmounting an obstacle as a united team engenders a shared narrative of resilience, a collective history of overcoming adversity. This process cultivates an profound sense of trust and an unshakable security. It instills the profound realization that mutual reliance is not only possible, but essential, that together you form an indomitable unit capable of confronting whatever life may present. This shared journey of problem-solving fosters an unparalleled sense of partnership. It transcends the mere experience of being in love. It embodies the profound reality of navigating life's currents together, shoulder to shoulder. The tangible manifestations of a couple approaching challenges as a unified front, as opposed to adversaries, are frequently discernible in their communication patterns. Adversarial couples may exhibit sharp, cutting tones, frequently interrupt one another, and resort to personal invective. They may emerge from discussions feeling more wounded and estranged than when they began. Couples who operate as a cohesive team, conversely, may engage in arduous conversations, yet their discourse is typically imbued with an undercurrent of respect. They may strategically pause discussions when emotions escalate to an unmanageable intensity, and they conscientiously strive to comprehend each other's perspectives. Even if the immediate issue remains unresolved, they conclude these exchanges with a palpable sense of connection and a shared dedication to charting a path forward. Given the crucial caution against self-sacrifice in the pursuit of love, the practice of effective compromise and negotiation without compromising one's intrinsic self-respect presents a delicate, yet achievable, equilibrium. This necessitates the establishment of clear boundaries and a profound understanding of one's own fundamental values. Prior to embarking on any negotiation, it is immensely beneficial to meticulously identify your non-negotiables, those core tenets that are indispensable to your identity and overall well-being. These are the elements upon which compromise is simply not possible. Subsequently, delineate those areas where flexibility is genuinely attainable. Openly and honestly communicate these boundaries and areas of potential compromise to your partner. A healthy compromise is characterized by both individuals feeling heard and respected, and neither party feeling coerced or compelled into an agreement that contravenes their fundamental beliefs or essential needs. It is about discovering resolutions that honor the inherent dignity of each individual within the partnership. For instance, if one partner possesses an absolute need for quiet recuperation after a demanding workday, while the other thrives on social interaction, a compromise might involve the socially inclined partner engaging with friends virtually for a brief period before seeking connection with their quieter partner, or they might jointly agree upon designated times for shared activities that cater to both their distinct needs. This embodies the very essence of constructing a realistic relationship foundation. It is founded upon mutual respect and a steadfast willingness to pursue outcomes that enrich the partnership without compromising individual integrity. The successful navigation of challenges as a unified team constructs a robust and enduring foundation for any relationship. However, this foundation achieves its truest solidity only when it is meticulously built upon a bedrock of shared principles. The subsequent, indispensable element in the architectural endeavor of forging a lasting partnership lies in the mutual understanding and alignment of the core values that will illuminate your collective journey. 4. Dignity in partnerships. Within the vast, interwoven fabric of human connection, love often emerges as the most luminous thread, the one we are most ardently encouraged to pursue. It is a force we encounter in cinematic narratives, literary epics, and melodic compositions. Undeniably, it is a potent and exquisite energy. Yet, the tales that have shaped our perception, the romanticized legends that have molded our understanding, frequently omit a vital component of the complete picture. They insinuate that love, in its most unadulterated and fervent manifestation, possesses the power to surmount all obstacles. This, regrettably, is a perilous fallacy. To cultivate a relationship that endures, one that offers solace, fosters growth, and embodies genuine companionship, demands more than mere sentiment. It necessitates a robust framework, a realistic relationship foundation. This bedrock is constructed from practical, quotidian elements often eclipsed by the fervor of romance. It encompasses mutual esteem, steadfast devotion, shared fundamental principles, uninhibited discourse, unwavering trust, and the capacity for each individual to flourish independently while simultaneously progressing as a unit. It is forged through deliberate exertion, a profound self-awareness, and a resolute readiness to confront tangible adversities rather than merely navigating the ebb and flow of emotion. This chapter embarks on an exploration of the indispensable constituent elements of such a foundation. We have previously discussed how love, while paramount, cannot serve as a substitute for the diligent labor involved in constructing a shared existence. Now, our focus shifts to a cornerstone of that endeavor, an element so fundamental that its absence can precipitate the disintegration of even the most ardent affection: dignity. Dignity in partnerships. Consider the individuals you hold in highest regard. It is probable that they exude a certain quiet fortitude, a self-possession that emanates from an intrinsic awareness of their own value. They do not require ostentatious displays to feel appreciated. Their worth is intrinsic. This is dignity. Within the context of relationships, dignity signifies the acknowledgement and preservation of the inherent worth and autonomy of both oneself and one's partner. It is not an expression of haughtiness or arrogance. Rather, it is a profound reverence for one's own individuality, one's boundaries, and one's intrinsic value as a human being. And critically, it involves extending that same deference to the individual with whom you choose to share your existence. The cultural glorification of romantic love can, paradoxically, encourage us to relinquish our dignity. We are led to believe that love entails sacrifice, that it necessitates prioritizing the other person's needs above one's own, that it involves overlooking imperfections for the sake of the union. While a degree of compromise is salubrious, a perilous threshold exists where sacrifice transmutes into self-annihilation. When love compels you to abandon your self-respect, your personal aspirations, your core tenets, or even your physical and emotional well-being, it ceases to be a force for good and begins to exert a destructive influence. This is precisely where the myth of love is enough falters, because a love that demands your diminution is not fostering a robust partnership, it is eroding the very ground upon which a realistic relationship foundation ought to be established. Contemplate the societal narratives that contribute to this erosion. We have been regaled with stories wherein the heroine endures hardship, mistreatment, or persistent doubt, all in pursuit of the ultimate reward, the hero's affection. This narrative implies that suffering for love is ennobling, that sacrificing one's own comfort and self-worth is a testament to the depth of one's feelings. This is a profoundly flawed perspective. A healthy relationship should augment, not impair or supplant, an individual's identity. When we compromise our dignity, we chip away at our own sense of self, rendering us less whole and, counterintuitively, less capable of being a genuine partner. The long-term repercussions are profound. Resentment festers, self-esteem plummets, and the relationship, starved of the authentic respect it requires, begins to languish, even if the initial sentiments of love persist. This brings us to a simple yet potent instrument for assessing the health of your romantic relationships: the friendship test. Reflect upon your closest companions. You likely harbor certain expectations regarding their treatment of you. You anticipate honesty, kindness, support, and respect. You would not countenance persistent criticism, disparaging remarks, or a lack of consideration from a dear friend. Yet, in romantic relationships, we often find ourselves accepting behaviors that we would never contemplate tolerating from our friends. Because the stakes feel more elevated, we fear losing the romantic partner, or we have internalized the notion that romantic love necessitates a different, more lenient standard. Ask yourself this with unvarnished honesty: would I tolerate this behavior from my most cherished friend? If the answer is an unequivocal no, then it represents a significant warning sign. It suggests that a deficit of dignity is present within your romantic partnership. This is not an exercise in keeping score or demanding flawless conduct. It is about recognizing that the standards of respect and consideration you extend to your valued friendships should constitute the absolute minimum in your most intimate relationships. When we permit our romantic partners to treat us with less respect than our friends do, we are signaling that our own worth is somehow less significant within this particular context. This engenders an imbalance that is profoundly detrimental to the realistic relationship foundation. Conflict is an intrinsic element of any close relationship. It is improbable that two individuals will concur on every matter at all times. The true measure of a partnership's resilience and the presence of dignity within it is not found in the absence of discord, but in the manner in which those disagreements are navigated. When dignity is present, conflict transforms into an avenue for growth and deeper comprehension. Partners engage in respectful discourse, they actively attend to each other's viewpoints, and they endeavor to grasp the root of the disagreement, even if ultimate accord is not reached. The objective is to identify resolutions or compromises that honor both individuals. However, when dignity is absent, conflict devolves into something destructive. Personal invectives supplant reasoned arguments. Contempt, sarcasm, and belittling remarks become weapons. Stonewalling, wherein one partner completely withdraws, can leave the other feeling unheard and invalidated. These behaviors are not merely disagreeable, they constitute direct assaults on a partner's dignity. They convey a message of disrespect, of devaluing the other person's sentiments and experiences. In such circumstances, love may still exist, but it is a love that is being poisoned. The emotional security of both individuals is compromised, and the bedrock of trust begins to fracture. Maintaining your dignity during conflict entails safeguarding your own emotional well-being and respecting your partner's right to their own perspective, even when it diverges from yours. It is about engaging in fair contention, not striving for victory at any cost. Beyond the management of disagreements, dignity is also intrinsically interwoven with individual autonomy. A truly robust partnership does not aim to subsume two individuals into a singular, indistinguishable entity. Instead, it cultivates an environment wherein both partners can flourish as distinct individuals while concurrently forging a shared existence. This entails respecting each other's separate identities, personal objectives, and individual requirements. It involves championing your partner's growth, even if it directs them along trajectories that might initially appear to diverge from your own path. A relationship founded on dignity permits ample space to pursue avocations, maintain friendships external to the partnership, and evolve as a person. Conversely, relationships that lack this respect for autonomy can become stifling. One partner may feel compelled to relinquish their aspirations, their professional ambitions, or their social connections to conform to a mold dictated by the other. This is not an indicator of profound love. It is a manifestation of control and a disregard for the other person's inherent right to self-determination. The realistic relationship foundation demands that we perceive our partner not as an extension of ourselves, but as a complete, independent being with their own unique journey. When this respect for individual autonomy is present, the partnership becomes a source of mutual enrichment, wherein both individuals are strengthened and more fulfilled because of, rather than in spite of, their individual pursuits. So, how do we address the question of how cultural ideals foster the erosion of personal dignity? It is deeply embedded within our narratives. Consider the archetypal damsel in distress, awaiting rescue, her agency utterly stripped away. Or the pervasive trope of the devoted partner who sacrifices everything: their career, their friendships, their very sense of self for the sake of the relationship, often lauded as the ultimate expression of love. These narratives, perpetuated across generations, subtly impart the lesson that personal worth can be relegated to a secondary position behind romantic validation. They normalize the concept that the renunciation of one's own needs and desires is a prerequisite for authentic love. This cultural conditioning renders it difficult for many to recognize when they are compromising their dignity. We may dismiss warning signs as indicators of passion or intensity, mistaking unhealthy fixation for profound connection. The very notion of love, when idealized to such an extreme, can blind us to the reality that a relationship built upon the erosion of self-worth is inherently precarious. It is akin to constructing a dwelling upon shifting sands. It may appear aesthetically pleasing for a time, but it is incapable of withstanding the tempestuous forces of adversity. And beyond the overt manifestations of disrespect, what are the subtle ways in which dignity can be undermined? It resides in the persistent, low-grade criticism that erodes confidence. It is present in the dismissive eye roll when a partner articulates an idea or a sentiment. It is evident in the partner who makes unilateral decisions, presuming their own judgment to be inherently superior. It manifests in subtle manipulation, the deployment of guilt, or the silent treatment employed as a punitive measure. These are not dramatic acts of cruelty, but they are insidious. They cultivate an environment wherein one partner exists in a state of perpetual apprehension, second-guessing themselves, and doubting their inherent value. The long-term ramifications are profound. For the individual whose dignity is undermined, it can precipitate anxiety, depression, a forfeiture of self-identity, and a deep-seated sense of worthlessness. For the partnership, it engenders a chasm of distrust and resentment. The emotional bond weakens, and the capacity to construct a shared future becomes increasingly arduous, even if the initial spark of love remains. The realistic relationship foundation cannot be erected when one partner feels consistently diminished. The preservation of dignity is not about maintaining a fragile ego or soliciting perpetual adulation. It is about recognizing the inherent worth that forms the bedrock of any truly robust partnership. It is about perceiving yourself and your partner as complete individuals, deserving of respect, kindness, and consideration. When this foundation of self-regard and mutual deference is firmly established, we can then proceed to explore the subsequent crucial element, the deliberate and ongoing commitment required to navigate life's complexities in tandem. Conclusion: a word that has launched 1,000 melodies, spun countless narratives, and ignited an unending constellation of dreams. We are often told it represents the ultimate prize, the singular panacea for every ailment of the human heart. For generations, the prevailing narrative has championed the notion that locating the right person, coupled with the intensity of one's feelings, is the sole determinant of a life well lived. This idyllic concept, that love alone possesses the power to orchestrate all else into perfect harmony, is undeniably alluring. It paints a picture of love as the grand crescendo, the definitive conclusion that imbues existence with its ultimate meaning. Yet, as we have diligently explored, this comforting fable, while seductive, frequently leaves us ill-equipped for the rigorous, sustained effort demanded by the construction of a shared life. It fosters an environment ripe for disillusionment when the initial effervescence subsides and the quotidian realities of partnership inevitably surface. Love is, without question, a potent force, a cornerstone of the human experience, but it is, and always has been, insufficient in its solitary manifestation. We have observed how an excessive focus on ephemeral sentiment can blind us to the indispensable, practical elements that truly anchor enduring relationships. The encouraging truth is that the architecture of lasting connection is not an arcane mystery veiled behind some mystical curtain. It is meticulously constructed, brick by deliberate brick, upon a robust framework we might term the realistic relationship foundation. This is not an exercise in extinguishing the flame of love. Rather, it is about providing that flame with a steadfast sanctuary where it may burn with unwavering brilliance, day after day. Perceive it not as a substitute for love, but as the essential scaffolding that empowers love to flourish, to expand, and to persevere through every season of life. At the very core of this foundation lies commitment. This transcends a mere ephemeral sensation or a vow uttered in a moment of heightened emotion. Commitment is a deliberate, conscious decision, a daily act of volition to invest in the partnership, to actively navigate challenges, and to remain present even when the terrain becomes arduous. It is the silent fortitude that declares, we are united in this endeavor, come what may. This steadfast devotion cultivates a profound sense of security, illuminates a shared trajectory upon which we can build, and bestows the resilience requisite to withstand life's unavoidable tempests. It is the active choice that unequivocally distinguishes a transient infatuation from a partnership destined for longevity, the quiet resolve that propels us forward when the initial exhilaration begins to recede. Intertwined inextricably with commitment is respect. This entails a profound appreciation for your partner as an individual, a recognition of their thoughts, emotions, personal boundaries, and unique identity. It is the act of perceiving them as an equal, treating them with inherent dignity, and honoring their perspective, particularly during moments of divergence. Absent respect, love can readily devolve into a corrosive force, precipitating self-abnegation and the gradual erosion of one's sense of self-worth. It forms the bedrock upon which healthy communication and effective conflict resolution are meticulously laid. Recall the apt analogy of a friend who systematically demolishes their own dwelling? We often exhibit a far greater tolerance for such destructive behavior in our romantic partners, simply because the sentiment of love is present, forgetting that respect mandates we uphold a higher standard for ourselves and those we cherish. Then there are shared values. This does not imply a quest for identical automatons. Rather, it signifies a mutual understanding of what genuinely holds significance in the grand tapestry of life. This encompasses your ethical compass, your aspirations, your worldview, your conception of family, and your approach to fiscal matters. When your fundamental principles resonate in harmony, it provides an unambiguous guiding star for collective decision-making and a unified vision for the future. It mitigates friction on pivotal life decisions and fosters a profound, underlying connection that extends far beyond shared pastimes or superficial interests. It is about aligning on the core tenets that illuminate your shared journey. Finally, and perhaps most crucially, is self-awareness. This represents the ongoing, diligent work of comprehending one's own needs, emotional sensitivities, ingrained behavioral patterns, inherent strengths, and acknowledge limitations. It is the capacity to assume accountability for one's own feelings and actions rather than deflecting blame onto one's partner. When you possess self-awareness, the propensity to project your insecurities onto your partner diminishes considerably. This cultivates more wholesome communication, facilitates genuine personal evolution within the relationship, and ensures that you articulate your own requirements and the realistic extent of your contributions. It is about presenting your most authentic self, not a diminished or projected facsimile. These pillars are not isolated entities, they are profoundly interdependent. Commitment devoid of respect can feel like an onerous obligation rather than a true partnership. Shared values without self-awareness can engender misunderstandings and unfulfilled expectations. They function in concert, forging a resilient edifice capable of supporting the beautiful, intricate reality of a shared existence. So, what does it truly signify to transcend the realm of the fairy tale? It means embracing the undeniable truth that love does not possess the magical ability to resolve all our predicaments. Instead, it bestows upon us the invaluable opportunity to confront those predicaments together as an cohesive unit. It means comprehending that sacrifice is only salutary when it is reciprocated and when it does not necessitate the abandonment of one's essential self. Authentic partnership is about mutual augmentation, not self-diminishment. It also entails acknowledging that while initial attraction is a delightful phenomenon, profound compatibility is something we actively construct and nurture through diligent understanding, sustained effort, and the unwavering application of these foundational principles. The inherent beauty of a relationship meticulously crafted upon these tenets is nothing short of profound. It is not a life bereft of passion, but one where passion is firmly anchored, secure, and sustainable. It is a partnership that empowers each individual to grow and to blossom, while simultaneously weaving a rich, shared existence. This is not a pessimistic prognosis. It is an empowering declaration. You are not destined for failure if your relationship does not resemble a continuous, dramatic romance. You possess the insight and the instruments to forge something authentic, something enduring, something that offers true and lasting fulfillment. The trajectory that lies ahead is yours to meticulously chart. Embrace the principles we have elucidated and apply them with intention. Engage in introspection regarding your own self-awareness and your fundamental values. Foster open, candid dialogues with your partner concerning commitment, respect, and your collective aspirations for the future. Place a premium on these foundational elements within your present relationships, or hold them dear as you embark on forging future connections. Remember, the title of this book is not an elegy, it is an urgent summons to a more grounded and, ultimately, more hopeful understanding of love. Construct your love upon a bedrock of substance, and it will not only endure the ravages of time, but it will truly ascend to magnificent heights.